My stuff's important too.
A girl named Ruby Rossi has a beautiful voice and loves to sing. She does this even when she's helping her father and brother fish. When their boat docked, Ruby herself handled all the formalities of selling the fish. The thing is, her parents and older brother Leo are deaf. They communicate using sign language. Of course, Ruby also knows this language and understands her family without any problems. She rushed to school and as usual fell asleep during class. Because of her family, Ruby is an outcast at school and doesn't socialize with anyone except Gertie. Some classmates ridicule her. Ruby is secretly in love with a boy named Miles, so when she found out he chose choir as an elective, Ruby didn't hesitate to do the same. Gertie was very surprised by this. After school, Ruby was met by her parents. They couldn't hear the loud music playing in their car. This became a new reason for ridicule from Ruby's classmates. When her parents needed to go to the hospital, Ruby went with them because the doctors don't know sign language. Her parents' issue was delicate, but Ruby had no other choice. If she doesn't help them, no one will. At home, due to the loud noises made by the family members, Ruby can't concentrate on her homework. For the others it's not a problem, as they can't hear anything. During dinner, everyone communicates through sign language. Ruby has been accustomed to this from an early age, so she doesn't feel uncomfortable. The next day, the first choir class took place. The teacher Bernardo Villalobos turned out to be a very eccentric man. He asked to be called Mr. V. The teacher checked each student's abilities, but was dissatisfied with everyone. Finally, it was Ruby's turn to demonstrate her vocal talent. She was afraid that the classmates would start laughing at her again, so she ran away. Ruby went to the lake shore to be alone. Here, where no one was around, she was able to sing. At home, she saw her parents arguing about something. In her free time from school, Ruby as usual helps her father and brother with fishing. She doesn't like this activity, but fishing is the main income for her family. On the shore, the fishermen are outraged that the city council representatives have started charging them a huge fee for additional costs for their mediation. Gathering courage, Ruby went to Mr. V, who didn't want to talk until he finished meditating. Finally, he was ready to listen to Ruby. She admitted that she was uncomfortable singing when the classmates were around her. The thing is, when Ruby first started school, she couldn't speak properly, so the others laughed at her. Mr. V was surprised that everyone in Ruby's family except her is deaf. He was ready to give Ruby another chance and listen to her singing in the next class. When Gertie came to visit Ruby, she said that her brother Leo is handsome. This was the last thing Ruby wanted to discuss. However, Gertie was full of enthusiasm and asked how to express her affection in sign language. Ruby decided to play a prank on her. Leo was puzzled, seeing Gertie's ridiculous gestures. In the next class, Mr. V asked Ruby to sing. At first she did poorly because she was very shy, but the teacher instilled confidence in her. When Ruby finally put aside all doubts and sang, Mr. V was very pleased. Ruby has a truly beautiful and strong voice. After class, Mr. V asked Ruby and Miles to stay. The teacher said he needed a duet for the autumn concert and gave the students homework. Meanwhile, the fish-selling business is not going well. The purchaser tried to cheat Leo, but Ruby intervened in time. However, Leo was still of the same opinion, believing that they should agree to any price. The choir classes continue. Ruby began to feel more confident. When everyone left, Mr. V asked Ruby and Miles to sing the song he had given them as homework. From the first minute, Mr. V realized that they hadn't rehearsed together. Since this song is about love, it's important for Ruby and Miles not just to sing a duet, but to feel all the emotions expressed in the song. They sang again. Mr. V pointed out their mistakes. When Miles left, Mr. V asked Ruby about her plans after graduation. The girl confessed that she doesn't plan to go to college because she struggles with studying. Ruby will probably continue to work with her father and brother. Miles, according to Mr. V, plans to apply to the Berklee College of Music. Mr. V is preparing him for auditions and advises Ruby to think about it too. If she gets a scholarship, her parents won't have to pay tuition. When Mr. V asked Ruby what she feels while singing, the girl began to express herself in sign language, because it is really hard for her to choose words to express her emotions. Mr. V decided that he would also prepare Ruby for the audition. They will practice in the evenings. At home, Ruby told her mother about this, but she considered it a waste of time. Ruby is tired of her life revolving solely around her parents. Leo went to a bar with other fishermen. Since he can't hear, he just observes. Suddenly some man accidentally pushed Leo. He demanded an apology, but the man was not going to apologize. This led to a fight, which fortunately was almost immediately prevented. It turns out that Gertie works part-time at the same bar. She took Leo's phone to leave her number. They started communicating through text messages. They liked each other immediately. Meanwhile, Ruby brought Miles to her house to rehearse. They talked about music. Ruby confessed that her parents don't support her desire to sing because they don't even understand what it means. Miles in turn also talked about his family. His parents often quarrel and overprotect him. The young people started rehearsing. They tried to sing for each other, but the feeling of awkwardness prevented them from concentrating. Then the young people decided to stand back to back to avoid embarrassment. This really helped them overcome the awkwardness. However, at the autumn concert, they will still have to look at each other. The rehearsal was interrupted by sounds of passion coming from her parents' room. They had no idea that they were actually being very loud. Ruby was terribly embarrassed in front of Miles. While Ruby was communicating with her parents in sign language, Miles sat in confusion. It seemed that the father and mother felt no shame for what had happened. Ruby hurried to escort Miles out of the house. The next day at school, she shared this with Gertie. When the other classmates in the cafeteria started laughing at her, Ruby realized that Miles had blabbed about everything. He tried to explain himself to her, but Ruby didn't want to talk to him. This situation made her realize that apart from Gertie, she has no friends. Despite everything, Ruby continues rehearsals with Mr. V. The teacher immediately understood that something was bothering her and advised the girl to let out her emotions. Ruby did just that, immediately feeling relief. The fishermen began to strike against the increase in the fee for the right to fish safely. Ruby translated for her father into sign language everything that was said at the meeting. Suddenly Frank took the floor, insulting the head of the council. Of course his daughter translated this. Everyone was in agreement with these words and applauded. Frank and Leo announced that they would now sell their catch without intermediaries. Many thought this was a good idea. Upon learning of what happened, Jackie was outraged. She can't believe that the head of the council wants to appropriate 60% of the revenue from all the catch. The next morning, Ruby woke her father because it was time to go fishing. Now the Rossi family as planned sells their catch directly to buyers. In her spare time, Ruby rehearses with Mr. V. She still hasn't forgiven Miles and doesn't want to talk to him. The Rossi family opened their own fish sales store. Business quickly picked up, so Ruby had less and less free time. Mr. V is annoyed by her constant lateness. He said he won't waste time on her if she doesn't respect his work. At school, Miles tried to apologize to Ruby again. It really hurts her when someone laughs at her relatives. Ruby always defends them because she can hear, and they can't. Miles feels guilty, realizing he was wrong. However, Ruby doesn't need his apologies. Ruby finds it increasingly difficult to combine rehearsals and work. The mother doesn't want her daughter to go anywhere because no one but her can talk to customers. Ruby is resentful of her mother, who believes that her daughter's personal life is not important. In the end, Ruby was forced to stay. Mr. V was texting her all the time. Of course, Ruby was late again. This time Mr. V didn't open the door for her. The next day, Ruby approached him at school and apologized, saying she wanted to continue. However, Mr. V did not see her as interested, so he refused to work with her further. Barely holding back tears, Ruby said that she had never done anything without her family before. At home, she told her parents that she dreams of going to Berklee College of Music, but her parents are not ready to lose their only translator. Ruby said that she can't stay with them forever, as she has her own personal life and dreams. Of course, Ruby didn't find understanding and went to her room. Frank and Jackie are thinking about what to do. If the daughter leaves, their business may be at risk. Meanwhile, Ruby, who was in despair, received a message from Miles. Juana Biles, who is in charge of fishery control, was going to go with Frank and Leo to check if they are breaking the law. Of course, it's hard for her to communicate with the deaf. Ruby eventually gave Miles a chance and invited him to swim. They had a great time together. Juana Biles asks Frank and Leo when their boat last underwent inspection. They couldn't hear her question, so Frank gave her a notepad. That way they could communicate. At some point the Coast Guard started calling Frank's boat, who of course didn't hear it. Juana was at a loss, not knowing what to do. The Coast Guard boarded and demanded an answer as to why they didn't stop. Juana explained the situation. Meanwhile, Ruby and Miles continue to have fun. They realize that they have feelings for each other. Coming home, Ruby learned that her father and brother could lose their boat license. They blame Ruby, who refused to go with them. Jackie supports her husband and son. The Rossi family was summoned to court. They were fined $2,500. Also, the judge said that they can continue fishing provided that there's always a hearing person on their boat who can respond to radio calls. At dinner, a dispute broke out among the family members. The parents insist that their daughter stay in town and continue to help them. Ruby disagrees, and this angered Leo. Later, the mother came to her room and gave her a dress for the autumn festival. Ruby explained that she wants to live independently. There was a candid conversation between the daughter and mother. They hugged. However, Leo is still angry with his sister, on whom their joint business depends. He doesn't want to talk to her. Finally, it was time for the autumn concert. Everyone is very nervous. Despite their deafness, Ruby's family was also here, as was Gertie. The performance began. For Ruby, this was her first experience on stage. She was sad that the parents couldn't hear her singing. When the choir finished their song, the audience burst into loud applause. After that, Mr. V announced that something special would follow. Ruby and Miles came on stage, performing the love song. Of course, her family can't share the delight of the rest of the audience. They simply don't understand what it means to hear and how beautiful sounds can be. After the concert, everyone congratulates Ruby. She really won over the audience. Mr. V believes that Ruby has excellent prospects in the music industry. However, he was unable to convince Frank and Jackie to let their daughter go for the audition. Mr. V is really sorry that such a talent is being wasted. When the family returned home, Ruby noticed that her father was upset. She had a heart-to-heart talk with him. At some point, Frank asked his daughter to sing. Ruby did so, while her father tried to feel the sound. This made him cry. In the morning, Ruby was awakened by her father. It turns out the family decided to take Ruby to the audition so that she could finally realize her dream. Ruby is very nervous. Miles approached her and admitted that he had failed the audition. Ruby couldn't believe it. Soon it was her turn to show her talents. Meanwhile, her parents and brother decided to sneak into the audition hall. Mr. V came to support Ruby and asked the admissions committee for permission to accompany her as a musician. Ruby started performing her song. When she saw her family, it gave her confidence. She began to accompany the song with gestures so that her parents and brother understood what she was singing about. After that, the family returned to their usual life. The summer passed very quickly. The exciting day came when the admission lists were published. Ruby passed the selection. The whole family is proud of her, as is Mr. V. Soon Ruby will go to Boston, while Miles will stay here. Of course, the separation will be very hard for them. Parents and brother are seeing off Ruby, who is preparing for independent life. Gertie volunteered to drive her to Boston. However, at the last moment, Ruby asked to stop the car. She wanted to hug her family one more time. They always did everything together, but Ruby needs to move on.